What's up, everybody? Jason Swenk here. I am excited for another episode. On today's episode, we're going to talk about why it's important for you and how you can actually forecast your agency so you can actually be more profitable. I have a repeat guest, Nate, who is amazing at all of this. And let's go ahead and jump into it. Hey, Nate, welcome to the show.
Jason, thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
good to be
excited to
back.
have you back.
Thank you.
So, for the ones that haven't checked out the first episode that we had you on, tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do.
All right, so I'm Nate Jensen. I'm the owner, founder of Agency Dad. We're an accounting firm. We focus on helping marketing agencies become more profitable. That's really that's really our niche. Is how do we drive profitability? We don't do any tax work. We don't do anything like that. We do bookkeeping. We do financial reporting. So everything we
Awesome.
do is geared to make you more profitable.
Well, we all want that, right? Because I think too many agency owners always focus on, just top line revenue. Hey, Jason, I want to make it to the million mark. Then I want to make it to the 8-figure mark. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what's the profit?
Yeah. Yeah, if you can work less and make more, I would rather have a lower top line and more profitability. So that's kind of the
Exactly.
idea.
Well, let's talk about like, are there like, how can we create forecasts? Because, I think a question I get asked often, and I think as you do as well, of like, can I afford to hire someone? Or what does it look like when I need to hire someone next? Like, how do I figure that out?
Yeah, in fact, that's probably the question I get more than anything else is can I hire somebody or when do I hire somebody? And if somebody asks me that, my response is, well, what are your sales going to be in the next 3 to 6 months? And if we can't answer that, then we really don't know if we can hire somebody. So for me, the forecast is where you start.
And so if that's where we need to start for like, what does our sales look like for the next 3 months? How can we forecast that out?
Okay, so there's a lot of methods, right? If you're like me and you're really into accounting, you can use linear regression, you can use exponential smoothing. There's a lot of you know kind of analytical tools like that. If you're an agency owner and I say linear regression, you're probably tuning out and you're
Yeah,
saying, "Hey, this
I
isn't
kind of I kind of almost passed out when you use those big
right."
words because I've never heard those before.
Yeah. So there's a method that if you're an agency owner and you just want to sit down by yourself and do your own forecast, there's a method I would recommend, and I've heard it called different things, but the term I like is the Dilbert method. So if you're familiar with Dilbert, the comic strip, there's a lot of uh, let's say questionable business practices used in that comic strip. But the idea is you sit down and you basically say, hey, what do I think it's going to be? What's my best guess? And so I've actually found, Jason, most agency owners are pretty in tune with a lot of the ins and outs of their business. So I can do the linear regression, but if someone says, hey, I happen to know that every December our sales go way down because the seasonality of the business, a business owner, an agency owner, they can say, well, my sales were, they're 500,000 in November. I'm expecting them to be, let's say, 400,000 in December, just because that's what happens. And for a simple kind of first pass, I think that's a totally appropriate way to set up your first budget or your first forecast.
It's great. And then now that we kind of set out the future forecast for sales for the next quarter, what's the next step in order to, making sure we're profitable or when we can actually hire?
Uh, Similar again, if you're using the Dilbert method already, the next step is think of a forecast like your profit and loss statement, right? You look at your P&L for the prior month. What did I sell? What were my costs of goods sold? What were my expenses? And so you're setting up a P&L, but it's in the future. What am I going to sell? What are my costs of goods sold? What are my expenses? Okay, get your rent, get your payroll, get all that in there. And what am I expecting my profit to be? And it's hilarious, Jason, that a lot of people will say, hey, well, if I'm not good at this, or I don't really know how to do this, uh, having a plan is the first step. The number of times that I've actually set up a forecast for a client, and I've come back to that client and said, hey, if everything goes according to plan, you're going to lose $10,000 a month, right? That happens all the time. And the one thing that we know about a forecast is it's going to be wrong. No matter what it is, it's going to be wrong. You're going to be high, you're going to be low. But if you do the forecast and your plan is to lose money, you've at least got to take some action, make some changes.
Yeah. One of the things that we did that I think is really easy for all of you guys listening is we had our bookkeeper export out all of our expenses on a spreadsheet. And literally, like you were saying, and then we basically put out 12 months. So we said January, so here's what it is fixed. And then we copied that all the way through December. And then we added a couple columns to the spreadsheet above and said, well, here's what we think we're going to bring in on revenue, kind of like what you're saying for the quarter. And then we could play with the model because then we did we put in the easy formulas, minus
Uh-huh.
income minus expenses, and then,
Right.
divided that by, to figure out our profit margins. So if we wanted to hire someone in the future, let's say 3 months from now, we would put in their salary under payroll. We would
Mhm.
add them in there. And then it was really easy to figure out going, well, man, okay, we can't afford this person because we look like we're bringing in, $1 million more this quarter, and we can afford to do this, this, and this, and still
Yeah.
keep our profit margins at X. Is that what you
Yeah.
suggest?
Yeah, exactly. You can always go deeper, right? You can always go and say, hey, we can't afford it, but should we afford it? And should we maybe look at raising our prices before we do it and so forth? There's all that stuff. But just for a first pass, yeah, exactly what you said. As you build out your model, say it's only 3 months, right? Maybe it's the year, but maybe it's just a few months. And if you say, hey, we're making this, this net income at the end of each of those months. And like you said, play with the model. What if we add one person? What if we reduce expenses here? What if we can get one more client? And again, you're never going to be right, right? It's a forecast. It's just a guess anyways. But if you're looking forward and you can play with that model and say, can we hire? Can we, uh, should we reduce our rent? Should we not renew our lease? All these kinds of things. You've just got to look forward. So many, so many people manage just historically, right? They see, how did we do last month? Oh, we didn't do as well as we thought we would. Well, what are we gonna do different this month? Well, let's work harder, right? If that's not a plan, you don't working harder as well, you're just gonna work yourself to death. And that's when you say, let's get more revenue because we don't really know why we're profitable or not profitable.
Yeah, I remember one time I came into, we used to do our budgeting and our forecasting really non-existent. And I remember looking at the bank account right before I went into a leadership meeting, and I was like, holy cow, this is the lowest it's ever been. And I was like, we're not going to be able to make payroll in the next 2 weeks if nothing
Mm-hmm.
changes. And we made payroll for all 12 years. We just made it that one. But after that, I realized I needed to do forecasting and build a performa out to
Mm-hmm.
really show me, is it like, because you're always going to have in the future, like if you do this modeling right, you're going to see where you actually start losing money or you don't have money, right? And it's
Yeah,
just about how far out is it? And then it gives you that time of going, wow, man, I got 6 months to get my act together in order to make a major change, especially if a big contract's about to end. And that's going to
mm-hmm.
take a really big dip in your income. Let's
Right.
say, Nate, you probably deal with, this all the time where some clients have a huge contract that's like 40% of their revenue.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And when business comes in kind of in a lumpy way like that, that's much harder to deal with.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things as I was preparing for this podcast that I was thinking about is there's really two kinds of revenue that I see, and predicting the revenue for each of those kinds takes a different sort of mindset. One is the retainer revenue, right? If you have a book of clients and you're like, hey, I know who my clients are, how much they pay me, your revenue forecasting is actually pretty easy. And if you have, if you have, you know what your payroll is, uh, it's pretty easy to say my retainer is enough to cover my payroll, my other expenses, and so forth. If you're a more project-based, say you're a web developer, uh, you're much more reliant on, hey, how much business do we think we can pick up in a given month or given quarter? And it's interesting, Jason. I've actually seen, I don't know if I can call it a trend yet, but I've seen quite a few of my clients who are on that that project-based kind of revenue. They've actually, as they're doing their forecasting, and I'm helping them with their forecasting, some of them have actually moved from a uh, traditional employee type model on the expense side to contracting a lot of that, because
The
when you're,
predictability.
yeah, well, yeah, predictability. When your revenue is so lumpy, it's very nice to have your cost be a lot more variable. You know, even if a contractor is more expensive per hour, it might be cheaper overall if your revenue is way up and way down.
Yeah, the other thing, I have a lot of mastermind members that in the past couple of months and even right now, they're going through acquisitions and they're getting bought. Like I'm
Right.
thinking of one of our masterminds, Dean, that just sold maybe 3 months ago,
Mhm.
and very successful business, in the multi-million dollar range, and he never really did forecasting. He never put a performa together. And
Mm.
when they actually, and this is why it's good too, especially if you guys are listening, both it's good for predicting out and profitability when you need, and to make yourself a little more relaxed rather than that volatility or
Volatility.
volatile. Yeah, there you go. Big words I can't say. I went to Florida State, guys. Come on. But all the people that are looking to buy you are going to look for the future cast, and they
Yeah.
want to know, because that's what they're buying sometimes. And if you don't know it, that's going to send up red flags. So for your sanity, for your predictability, and especially for if you want to be able to potentially sell one day, please make sure you do these on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's driving that profitability, right? Managing to the future instead of just wishing you had changed the past.
Exactly.
But Jason, there's something you mentioned a few minutes ago that I wanted to get back to. You talked about that time when you were almost out of money for payroll, right? We actually, and I recommend this as well, but we actually do for our clients uh, multiple kinds of forecasts. So the first one is the P&L forecast, but we do a separate cash flow forecast, and we'll usually have that like a rolling 8-week forecast. And the payroll is a perfect example. Is if it's Monday morning and that's when you run your payroll and you're out of money, you're like, do I have personal money I can throw in the business? Do I have a really good banker friend that can somehow give me a line really fast? And even if you do, you're going to pay through the nose on that rate to get the money. Uh, it's a totally different experience if you're looking ahead and you're like, oh my gosh, 8 weeks, our bank account goes negative. What can we do? Well, if you need to get a loan, you have 8 weeks to get it, but you can say, hey, maybe we can reduce expenses. Maybe we can not take that owner distribution I was planning on. You have a lot more options. So the P&L forecast is where it all starts. Uh, but you need to take that and go to the next step and say, how's my cash flow going to change based on based on my expectations of sales and expenses and so forth.
Yeah. That reminds me, I tell all of our mastermind members and I tell people in the agency playbook, the first thing I want you to do is get a line of credit. And they'll be like, hey, Jason, I'm good. Like, I got a ton of
Mm-hmm.
cash. I can operate for over 3 months. I'm like, things are not always going to be that good.
Uh-huh.
And so get a line of credit when you don't need it. And so if you ever do come into hard times, you don't have to miss payroll and you don't have to be embarrassed, because if you miss payroll and you tell your employees and your team that, or your contractors, they're jumping ship, and
Absolutely.
finding the best talent is very, very hard. And I always say, get a line of credit. I don't care if you don't need it. Like, I think we tapped into it one time when we actually needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the other trick with the line of credit: they will cancel it all the time if you never use it. So
Yeah.
every month, I would just take out like 5,000 for one day, put it back in so they see some movement,
Yeah.
because it doesn't cost you anything if you don't use it.
Absolutely. You're totally right. So
So,
but the point is, I think you have that, use it when you need it. Have it, get it before you need it, like you say. Um, but just you've got to look forward. Again, the number of times I've seen people who they have no idea where they're going. They just know where they've been or where they are, and and then they want to know, hey, should I do this? Should I do this? And should I do this? You got to look at the future. And I know this can be an overwhelming thing for people, and that's why I say, hey, if you can't do a 12-month forecast, do a 3-month forecast. Look at your sales for 3 months, and then once a month, sit down and add on that next month. That's gonna get you way ahead of where you are if you're not even doing that.
Yeah.
And it's just a great place to start. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Nate, this has been awesome. Is there anything I didn't ask you before you tell the listeners about this cool special offer?
let's see. I would add one thing, I guess, and this isn't just with forecasting. This is with kind of bookkeeping and reporting in general. One thing I wish my clients understood more when they became clients was the difference between what a fixed cost is and a variable cost. Uh, if you have a lot of what we call fixed costs, and that's a cost that just you pay every month, it might change, but it doesn't change because you sell more. So you have rent, you have insurance, you have your payroll and things like that. A variable cost is a cost that does change with sales. And so if you have sales commissions, that's going to go up the more you sell. Any direct media spend obviously is going to go up the more you sell. Some If you're contracting your work, that kind of stuff's going to go up the more you sell. Uh, the more you can move your fixed costs into variable costs, the easier it is to be profitable, because the more fixed costs, you're like, I've got to sell this much every month just to break even. And then when I go above that, that's my profit. If you can change those fixed costs to variable, uh, your break even number goes down. And so as soon as you hit this number, you're going to hit that profitability sooner each month. So your sales can be lower and you're still going to make more money.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't really learn that until kind of the very end, and
Yeah,
it makes a big difference. So great
yeah,
advice. Well, Nate,
yeah.
this has all been amazing. If people want to know more and possibly work with you, and because they're like me, they look at numbers and they go, I'm dizzy. What can they do to reach out to you?
Oh, thanks. First of all, one thing we actually do is we take most of the numbers and we put them on charts, graphs, and we make them really easy for people to just see a picture and understand it and move forward. So that's number one. But if they want to get a hold of me, agencydad.money is our website. We do have a free offer for your listeners. It's agencydad.money/free audit. And what we do is we actually do an audit of their financials and compare their financials to some industry benchmarks. So
Oh, I
see how they
like
are.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys better
Uh,
take Nate up on that offer. That's crucial. I mean, because we all want to know where we stack up and where we actually need to go. So make sure you guys go there. Say the URL one more time.
it's agencydad.money/free audit. And just because of the topic of this podcast, I'll mention that's a third forecast that we do, is we actually forecast people's metrics so they can see in the future if their metrics are getting out of whack based on where they should be. It's just another way to give us a red flag when something needs to be changed.
Awesome. Well, everybody go check out that, get that free audit. And until next time, have a swank day.